Right, time for a quick sound check and video check. Hello, you know the ropes. If it's working, if you could put a comment in the live chat, please, that will help me. Thank you very much, and see you in 8 minutes and 56 seconds. Hello, good evening everyone. Welcome to In Studio Live, the 96th edition. And tonight we're talking about Affinity Photo. And I'm glad to be with you. I was running another half marathon earlier today, got the medal, see, made it, got round there. In fact, 10 minutes quicker than the last one I did. So quite pleased with myself actually. So anyway, that's not why you're here. You're not here to listen to me bragging about doing half marathons. You're here to learn about photography. Can I just say, please say hello in the live chat if you haven't done so already. I've got about 5 or 6 viewers at the moment. I've said hello to 2 of you so far. S Numbers is in the chat as well. So hi. Welcome along, and anybody else who is listening. So, what have we got on the show tonight? Well, as I say, tonight is an introduction to Affinity Photo, and the way I'm going to do it is I've got 4 short-ish videos that I'm going to play in. They are going to eventually be standalone videos on the live stream, but not on the live stream, of the YouTube channel. But as live stream viewers, you will get to see them tonight without having to wait for all that. And I'm here to answer any questions in the chat as we're going through them. So not only do you get the sneak preview, but you get the chance to ask questions as they go through, and I will do my best to answer them. So that's what we're going to do. The 4 videos are, the first one, which is the longest one, is all about the user interface. I wanted to cover that because there are various terms that they use with Affinity Photo that, well, it certainly confused me initially. I thought, well, what's going on there? And it's only when I realised what a particular term meant that certain other things slotted into place. The second one, I'm going to talk about layers. Now, I'm assuming, I know for some of the people who will be watching these, they've got no grounding in photo editing tools like Photoshop. So I want to cover the concept of layers, but even if you do, and you're a Photoshop user, perhaps thinking about transitioning to Affinity, layers do behave slightly differently in Affinity compared to Photoshop, with one particular thing to note between a bitmap layer and an image layer and how those behave differently. So I wanted to cover that. The third one is all about saving and exporting. Again, it's a little bit different to how Photoshop works, so I thought that was going to be worth covering. And the final one, which is perhaps the one you all want to know about, is raw processing and how raw processing works. And again, there's a couple of gotchas with that you need to just be aware of. So do stay tuned and make sure you see that one because it's not quite what is not, in some places, not doing exactly what you might think. So those are the 4 videos. As ever, I'm going to intersperse that with things like image feedback. I've had some images via Facebook, some via email, so I'll give you some feedback on those. And towards the end, I will talk about the image of the week, which will appear on the Facebook group. So it is interactive, so as I said, do ask your questions in the live chat and I'll try and answer them as we go through on there. Nice to see a few more people have tuned in now. We've got 9 concurrent viewers, so if you haven't said hello in the live chat, please do. I'd love to know who's watching. But whilst you're doing that, I can pay some attention to what's going on in the live stream, in the live chat. Obviously, it's taken more out of me than I thought doing the half marathon. And hi, Peter, who I've just seen in the chat. Let me play the first video. Affinity Photos rapidly becoming one of the more common tools for editing images. And I wanted to do a beginners series just to ease people into using it. And I'm going to start completely from scratch, assuming that you know just about nothing about photo editing or Photoshop or anything like that. And so this first session is all about how the interface works. And if you're a Photoshop user and coming to this, you will notice a few noticeable differences, shall we put it that way. Let's move over into Affinity Photo and I can talk you through the interface. You can see I've got it over the screen, over the shoulder there. Just to comment right at the start, the main area in the middle is our work area, the canvas if you like, that we're working on. And if I go full screen, you can see the other bits a little bit clearer. Down the left hand side we have all the tools. Now these are tools like selection tools, like paintbrush, eraser tool, etc, etc. By default, when you come in, you are in the move tool, which allows you to move the image around on there. Above that we've got standard sort of Windows Mac menu up at the top. And then we have what they call the toolbar, which runs all along the top here. And below the toolbar, at the moment it's only got information in it, but that is our context toolbar. Now, you'll see that change if I choose which tool I have access. So if I choose the paintbrush, we can see that changes to give us access to the size, the opacity, flow, etc. On there, and various other tools relating to that. If I change that to the elliptical marquee, again, different menu on there, and something like the blur tool will get yet again different settings available with that. So we can just move through them. The top one being well, they call it the view tool, and that, as I say, it just allows you to move things around on the canvas. Also allows you to zoom in. So if I hold Control and use my mouse, I can zoom in on the image or zoom out. There are actually shortcut keys for this. Control 1 goes to 100%. Control 0 fits on the in the work area on there. Right, over on the right hand side is something which is a little bit different. This area is known as the studio area, and we've got a number of panels in here, and these panels are the sort of standard things you would expect on an editing software. The ability to do adjustments, to view the layers which are set up, layer effects, and so on. We've got things like color, brushes up here as different tabs. Now, if you've got multiple monitors and you want to move things around, you can undock things. So I can undock the histogram, I can have it floating. I could push it up onto a different monitor. You can't see it, but believe me, it went through onto a different monitor with that. And basically you can do quite a lot with it. There are other panels you might want to have on here, and you can get those from the View menu and under Studio. So if, for example, I wanted the Info panel, I could select that, and at the moment it's come up as a floating one. I can dock that into anything else by just grabbing hold of there and placing it on the bar where the other tabs are, and it's successfully docked. I can put it in as its own item by going to the bottom of one of the items, and it will slot it in there. There is actually a left-hand side studio available, and you can see as I move it over here, it gives me the option to put it in over there, and I could dock my histogram over here. You see as I move it down, where it goes blue, that's an area where I can dock something. So I've now got that on there, and I can set up a display as I want it to look. So I might want, for example, the layers to always be visible or always to be visible over on this side, like that. And I can keep messing around with it. I can decide, well, maybe I don't want the stock one. I can pull it off there and get rid of it. And I can do things like that. And to get the display looking as I want it to look for how I want to work. Now, if you've been playing around with it like that and you think, actually, I've made a complete pig's ear of this, how do I reset it? View, and under Studio, we can reset Studio and everything will go back to the defaults on there. But suppose I have made one change that I particularly want to do, and in my case it's layers. I want that really to be down here at the bottom, ideally by itself. So I'll put that in there. Now, having got the display looking how I want it to be, I might want to save this. So let's suppose this is the layout I want whenever I'm working here in Studio. How do I do that? I go up to the View menu and Studio Presets, Add Preset, and I will call it IMB Ian's Studio, and say OK. So now, if I was to reset my what they call their studio, reset studio, I haven't got the layers down there. I can just go View, Studio Presets, Ian's Studio, and we've got the layout looking as I want it. Talking of customizing the layout, you can customize what's on the toolbar at the top and the tools down the side. Again, off the View menu, you can see here, Customize Toolbar, and that's the one at the top. So if I select that, you can see we've got these dotted rectangles, and I can choose to put extra things into there that I want. So, for example, if I wanted, let's see what we haven't got up there that might be useful. Let's suppose I wanted my account icon to be up there. I can just drag that and place it in up here. So I've now got that up there. Maybe I've decided I don't want that. I just drag it down into this area and it vanishes. So that gets rid of things like that. So you can customize that all you like. I will close that. You can also customize the tools on the left hand side here. View, customize tools, and again different ones you might want to have access to. Suppose I want access to the custom blur tool. I can just drag that over onto here, put it in where I want, so down at the bottom there, and View, turn off Customize Tools on there. And again, I could have done the same sort of thing of just moving and dragging things off there that I don't want. But I've got that now set up on there. One thing just to say about the tools over on this side is you'll notice some of them have got these little triangles in the corner, and that's because they are what we call stacked tools. So you can either click and hold on a tool and it will show you everything that's underneath there with it, or you can precise click on that little triangle. If you're as good as that, it can show you all of the ones which are underneath that way, and it just means that it's grouped together all the similar tools. Other things you can do to customize the appearance is Edit, Preferences, and User Interface. Now, I sometimes prefer not to work with light text on a dark background. Sometimes I find it quite hard with that. I've got the option to change that to light colored, and one of my favorites actually is I actually find the colored icons down here look a little bit almost childlike. You can have them monochrome, which I actually quite prefer. But for the sake of the tutorials, I'm going to make these dark and not monochrome, because that's what most people will be using. So you can adjust the layout like that. One thing I want to talk about up on the toolbar at the top is this little selection here, 4 or 5 icons. They are what we refer to as personas. Now, personas are basically a sort of preset. By default, when you come in, you are in the photo persona. The next one along is the Liquify persona. So if I select that, you'll see that the tools down here change. The panels over here in the studio change. And I'm just going to use the square bracket to bring my brush size down. And I can start just playing around. I can make this iceberg taller if I wanted by using the Liquify like that. And I can just keep pulling on the pixels to adjust things. Maybe bring that down just a little bit like that. So I've got the option to play around with things and adjust things in there with the Liquify tool. And we've got, as I say, different views and tools over there. Now, I'm not going to go into full detail of all you can do. That at the end of it, you have to choose to apply or cancel, and that effectively then gets baked into your image. I'm going to say apply on here. So now I'm back. When I hit apply, it goes back to the photo persona, and my Liquify changes have happened. Next one along is the develop persona. Now, this is designed for processing raw images, and I'm going to do a specific video all about that. So I'm not going to say any more about that at this point. Cancel out of that one. Next one along is the tone mapping persona. Now, the tone mapping persona is designed for basically HDR images or 32-bit images where you've got a dynamic range which is too large really to display, and you've got to work out how to compress things and do that. So unless you're doing that sort of work, you don't need to know about that one. I'm not going to cover that at the moment, so cancel out of there. It takes me back to the photo persona. The final persona is quite an interesting one. This is the export persona, and this allows us to export our images into different formats. Now, you may be aware that we have an export on the menu, and you don't have to go into the export persona to export your images. What the persona allows you to do is to do a lot more advanced exports. So you can effectively export the individual layers, or you can export different regions of an image as files in their own right. And it allows you to do that sort of thing and to have greater control over what you export. Again, it's one of those things that unless you need to know about it, it's something you probably won't need to go into. I'll show you exporting in a different video. So that's my overview of the user interface for Affinity Photo. I hope you found it helpful, and it gives you that grounding on the different parts and what they're all for. Right, so that was the first of the 4 sections that I've got tonight on Affinity. And as I said in the video, I wasn't covering raw processing. That's actually the 4th video that I'm going to show tonight, or the 4th pre-recorded section on there. So that is coming up towards the end. Right, let's move on and have a break from Affinity and head over into Lightroom, and I can give some feedback on the images which are emailed to me. I know I say this every week, but just in case there's people who are new, who haven't watched the live stream before, I give priority in terms of feedback to images which have been sent to feedback@ians-studio.co.uk. You're more than welcome to post them in the Facebook group as well, but the priority ones are the ones that are emailed to me, because I can give better feedback on those in terms of the settings and focus and things like that. So not got that many emailed to me this week. In fact, I think they're all from John Barton this week. So let's head over to Lightroom and I'll go through those. Yeah, we've got 4 of them from John. The first 2 are drone images. I'll just go full screen so you can see that. These were drone images. What I would say, John, about this, and I've said this many times, you pick the wrong time of night to actually do this shot. It really needs to be done when you've got some of that residual daylight, that dusk, that magic 20 minutes, which is 20 minutes after sunset on there, because this is just too dark. And if I zoom in, not only that, I think it must have been a blustery day, but because it's dark, the drone's having to use a slow shutter speed, which you can see you've got sort of camera shake on there, and blurs and things like that. So it hasn't really worked. And this big black area at the top just does nothing for the image on there. I'm sorry that's a bit brutal, but that's the case. Also not sure, but I think you've got a wonky horizon over there, but I can't tell. I mean, the pier looks straight, but the horizon does look wonky. Same really goes for this one. Again, zoom in. This one's a little bit sharper, less of a blur camera shake on there, but you've got blown out highlights and no detail in the shadows. So the only solution for this is time your drone flights to be 20 minutes after, within the 20-minute window that starts about 20 minutes after sunset time. If you look at any of my night photography videos on YouTube, I mentioned that several times on there. It also sent me this one, which is, let me just get some more information on it. Yeah, although it's been emailed through, I haven't got any of the setting information on here. So I don't know what camera you've used on there, but there's a couple of real problems with it. It's soft. It's actually very soft. Now I've zoomed in on there, and there is horrible chromatic aberration on there. Can you see that purple down there? Now I don't know whether that can be corrected or not, but let's have a go. Lens corrections, and well, obviously we can't do that. Remove chromatic aberration. Does that help? Not a lot. So the only thing we can do is to do it using the defringe. So I'm going to use that just to select there. So that's got rid of the colour on it. Or rather, it's targeted the colour. So that helps a little bit on there. It doesn't look quite so bad now with that. So that's about all I can say on that. It's a nice shot, but unfortunately, it's just not. It's soft, and I don't know the reason why without having all the lens setting or the camera settings on there for that one, John. Moving on to the other one, there's a nice concept here, but this is something I've said to you many times in feedback that I've given on the channel. Sorry to be blunt, but your horizon's way wonky on there, so let's get that sorted. And you've got your horizon going straight through the middle, whereas it'd been better about a third of the way through. Now, I think the more interesting part of this is actually at the bottom. So I'm going to just lose that much at the top. And with the horizon higher up, I think that's much more interesting. Now, I don't like the sun directly in the middle either. So I would look to try and find about a 1/3 up. So doing something like that, I think, gives you a much stronger image with it. I still think it needs a little bit of post-processing with it. And that's bring the highlight down just a tad. Actually, I'm going to do it with the white, so I'm just seeing if I can bring anything back with the blown out sun. I'm not bothered about it being blown out because that's the nature of what it is. And then just a little bit with the shadows. Yeah, I'm not sure about using shadows for that. That's moving a little bit too far on shadows. I think a tone curve might be a better option. If you haven't watched my video on the difference between using tone curves and the shadows and highlight sliders, it's a long video, it's 45 minutes long, but I go into great detail as to when you would use either of them, and this is definitely one for the curves rather than the sliders, and that gives a much better result. So going back to basic, I would probably just give a little bit of maybe vibrant, up the vibrance slightly, and just bring the temperature up a little bit to make it look a little bit more sunsetty. And I would do something like that. I'd also consider just putting a vignette on it, a subtle vignette. For those who are not aware, I do have a set of presets for things. So my preset number 2 on there gives quite a good effect on that. So the difference being, that's before, it never does the crop on the before, and that's the after. So it's just brought it up a little bit on there. I quite like the contrastiness actually that you've got down here. So I might just add a little bit of that back in. Not too much. Maybe do it with the clarity. Oh no, the clarity is not working. So something like that. Yep. So that's what I would recommend with that, John. And I think that's all of yours. So head back over here on that. Right. Okay. So where are we? We are. We've got, let me just pull up the chat. Just a couple of things to comment on there. S Numbers said, learnt a lot. There is a lot in all of these videos that I'm showing tonight on Affinity, and I do go through them at quite a pace. And I make no apologies for that. They're designed such that if you want to look at a particular part of it, you can then just go back and re-watch that one bit on there. So breakneck speed, so you find out what's in there, and then when you come to start putting things into practice, and you're thinking, okay, well, how do I customize the interface? Oh, Ian talks about that. You can then just fast forward through to that little bit and maybe just watch it over a couple of times if you have to on there. I'm really sorry, but I suspect I am going to completely butcher your name, Evind. I hope I've got that right. No need to apologise about not sending them to via email. As you will see, I can give a fair bit of feedback even on the Facebook ones. It's just I can go that extra level with the email one. So yeah, please do both, but no need to apologise for not doing it at all. And yeah, Andy, yeah, it would be good to see them via email as well as on Facebook. because I can give some feedback and instant feedback on Facebook as well during the week. And what I want to try and encourage people to do is to get other, for you to be commenting on each other's images rather than it just being me giving feedback, which, to be honest with you, is one of the reasons I don't always give feedback online, certainly not initially, because the advice I was given was that if I jump in, because it's my group, my show, etc., and I give my advice, nobody else will come in and dare contradict me, which is absolute rubbish. Of course you're allowed to contradict me, and I'd be really upset if people felt that they couldn't. But the advice is don't. Give the space to help people to do that. Right, questions from S numbers 1. Are you going to open the Academy anytime soon? As I tried joining and it said it was closed at the moment. Right, yeah, interesting one. Right, I hope to reopen the Academy sometime next year. I don't know quite when. One of the reasons I closed it was I didn't feel I was providing enough value through the Academy, and I need to resolve that before I felt comfortable charging on there. My value was coming through the YouTube channel rather than through the Academy, and that felt wrong for me to be charging on there. So I have got plans, and it will. If the plans come to fruition, I would imagine second quarter to mid next year to get that going again. I just need to set aside about a month to do practically nothing but Academy stuff to get it to that level where I feel comfortable opening the doors on there. But yeah. There will be a chance for you to join on there. Right, okay, moving on. The next video on Affinity is all about layers and the differences between different types of layers within Affinity. So, as they say, roll VT. Hello, welcome back to my introduction to Affinity Photo. I'm Ian Butterfield. In this video, we're going to look at different types of layers within Affinity. And the way we're going to do that is I'm going to do a very short tutorial on how to montage two images together. And as I'm doing that, I'll show you and explain the concepts between different types of layers and how we can use them for different things. So let's go over to Affinity. Here on the screen, I've got an Explorer window with some images in. Affinity itself, I've got nothing on the screen at the moment. So I'm going to want a background image for this, and I'm going to choose this one of the glacier, and I can just simply drag that to Affinity and it's on there. Now I'm going to want a second image on there to act as a layer above. So I'm going to put this image of a boat onto here. Now, two ways I can bring it in. If I drop it onto the context toolbar or the tabs area here, it will come in as its own document. You can see I've now got two tabs open with this one on its own. I actually don't want that, so I'm going to close that. The other way to bring it in is this time I drag and I just drop it somewhere on top of the existing canvas, and it's come in as its own file. I can now resize this to put it on there. Now, I want you to know that at the bottom here, our background image came in as a pixel layer. What that means is it's editable. The picture within picture, the boat, came in as an image layer, which gives it certain extra properties, shall we put it that way. So I can do various things with it that I can't do if it was a pixel layer. So let me show you that. I'm going to duplicate that by right-clicking on it and selecting duplicate. So I've got two versions of it now on there. I'm going to hide the bottom one for the time being, and this top one, right click and rasterize, which will make it into a pixel layer. And can you see with that selected, I've no longer got access to things like stroke. I've lost the option to replace the image. If I go over to this one, hide the pixel based one, we can see the options that we've got. We've got replace image. I could choose another image to replace it, as simple as that. I can stroke it, which I'm going to do with white, and I'm going to make the width a nice white border on there, and the joins I'm going to have a square, so it sort of gives it a frame on there. I go over to the pixel based one and hide that. On the pixel one, I don't have that option available, but what I can do is I can edit it and I can do adjustments on there. But with the image one, I can't. So I'm going to keep the image one for the purposes of this, and I will delete that layer by dragging it onto the trash can at the bottom. So we've got that. Want to add an effect to this, so whilst that's selected, I click on Effect Layer, and the effect I'm going to put on is an outer shadow, and I'm going to just bring out the radius and the offset, a little bit on the intensity as well, and hopefully you can see we've now got this drop shadow on there. Close. So it just looks like the picture-in-picture image has got a nice little frame to it, and it's got a little shadow to separate it from the background. Advantage of it being an image, as I said before, I can now change that with the selection tool active on there. I can say replace image, and I could go to the other iceberg and say open, and you can see all the effects I'd put on it. The stroke around there and the drop shadow have come with it. Now, suppose I want to do something with the background. Maybe I want the background to have a bit of a different colour to it. I can create and use an adjustments layer. An adjustments layer is something which allows me to do a change. So I'm going to do recolor on this, and it comes in with a horrible red on there, which I don't like and don't want. I'm going to go with a sort of sepia on there, bring the saturation right down, so we've got this slight sepia sort of look to it. Maybe bring the lightness up a little bit, find exactly the colour I want on there, and that is that. Now, looking at these layers, you can see how this stacks. Imagine each layer as being something that's transparent or partially transparent. The bottom layer is our image. Above that, we've got a transparent layer that maybe, imagine it as something that's coloured, and it's making whatever is below it take on the colour of this adjustment layer. Now, it's non-destructive. If I just double click on that, I could decide that maybe I want it a bluey colour or a green colour, or I could go to a red colour. Actually, I still want the brown sepia tone, so I'm going with that and close that out. Now, I might think, oh, well, can I do something with the picture-in-picture? So I click on there and go, yes, I want an adjustment layer, and I'm going to make that one black and white, I think. So I do another adjustment layer. This one is a black and white layer. Now, let's just do a few things with this. Play around with the cyan, make that a little bit darker, make the blues a little bit darker on there. I think that's what we want for it. And I can close that. But now, can you see the problem? The problem we've got here is that that adjustment layer is affecting everything below it. So it's affecting our picture-in-picture, but it's also affecting the background and making that black and white too. We can fix that by right-clicking on the icon and selecting Mask to Below. And what that does is it makes it apply just to the layer that's below it. So I do that, and now we can see the black and white conversion has only happened with the and the picture-in-picture. The layer below is separate. So we can drop down the arrow, and we can see it's now just part of this layer, so that it's not affecting the items below it. But because this is still an image, look what I can do. I can say replace image. I want to go back to the boat, and all those things are still applying because that has retained the image option on there. So let me recap what we've looked at. When you first open an image, it comes in as a pixel layer. In other words, something that you can edit. If you drag in a different image, if you drag it onto the context toolbars or the tab line there, it will come in as its own entry, a pixel layer, separate image, separate tab to do it. But if you drag it in on top of an existing image, it will come in as an image layer, which is different to the pixel type layer. The advantage of an image layer is you can switch out the image that's in there effectively non-destructively, and you can apply things like stroke borders very easily on that. We've looked at effects, which aren't actually layers, but by clicking on an image and selecting effects, we can apply things such as a drop shadow, which are tied to that particular layer. We've looked at adjustment layers, such as a recolor adjustment, which enable me to put the background into sepia tone, and a black and white adjustment layer, which I then clipped or assigned to a particular layer rather than to the whole image on there. So that's it. I hope you found that overview of layers within Affinity helpful and has given you a little bit of background on how you might want to use them. Right, so that's the second of the videos. Time's marching on, isn't it? So let's move on with this. There's nothing new in the chat for me to comment about at the moment. So this is the point in the show where I give a shout out to my sponsors, which as ever is you. And the way people sponsor me is through BuyMeACoffee, and they're using the link that's up there. It's basically BuyMeACoffee, which is a standard thing that YouTubers use to try and offset the costs of doing these sort of live streams and videos and things like that. So if you do find these helpful and you want to help keep them going, then just think about buying me a cuppa to help pay and cover some of the costs. And each week I give a shout out to someone who's bought me a cuppa. This week my shout out is to David Jones. His name's on the mug. So cheers, David. Really appreciate that because I'm a bit dehydrated at the moment after doing the half marathon. So thank you for that one, David. And the other shout out I do at this point is subscribe, like and share. If you haven't subscribed, please do so because that will help me. The more people who are subscribed, the more YouTube will offer my videos out to people, etc. Same with the like. Now I've got 7 likes and 11 people watching, so there's 4 of you who haven't hit like yet. So you know who you are. Just go and hit that button and make sure it's the thumbs up, not the thumbs down. The last couple of weeks somebody's been hitting the thumbs down one. Not good, not good. Won't let you watch in future if you do that. Seriously, no. Actually, I don't care because YouTube, it's nice to have the thumbs up, but YouTube still counts a thumbs down as interaction, and that's what counts. And yeah, my thanks to everyone who's been sharing the link to the videos and telling other people about it in Facebook groups or on their own feed as well. I really, really do appreciate that. And that helps me a great deal as well. If you aren't a member of the Facebook group and you're not signed up for my newsletter, links are down below the video, and please do so. Right, so back on to Affinity. The third video is quite a short one, in fact a very short one, and it's all about exporting files and saving files within Affinity, just so that you know what's going on there. And as they say, roll VT. Hello, welcome back to my Affinity tutorial series. This is only going to be a very short video, but just looking at the differences between saving and exporting within Affinity Photo. So let's hop over into Affinity. So this is the project I was working on in the previous tutorial. I've got a number of layers to it down here, and now I want to save this. So, File and Save. Now, bear in mind that what I opened was a JPEG image. If I hit Save, look what happens. It says that the document contains non-pixel elements. In other words, I've got layers to it. So it has gives me two options. I can either flatten it and save and overwrite the image with this modified version, or I can do a save as, which will enable me to save it as an Affinity Photo file. So I'm going to do save as, and you'll notice here that the save as gives me just one format, well, two actually, an AF photo or an AF template. I'm going to save it as an AF photo with the same name, just different extension, and save. So there we go, and that has preserved all the layer information in there. Now suppose I wanted a JPEG version of this or some other format. File, save as. You might think if you've used Photoshop this is the obvious way to do it, but when you come here you'll see we've only got the option of AF photo and AF templates, neither of which is what I want, so I'm going to cancel that. The way we do it is File, Export, and Export gives me a number of options: PNG, JPEG, PSDs, things like that. Now we want a JPEG, so I'm going to select that. I can choose the quality. I can actually adjust the size of it. So if I just wanted a smaller version to go online from this, I could say, oh, 1024 pixels on there. I can move my quality down a little bit to save a bit of space. And notice as I'm doing that, it's recalculating the space. If I leave it at 100, it's quite a relatively large file, 766 kilobytes. Bear in mind I've changed the size of it. If I bring it down even to 90, can you see it's a third of the size? So even that just small change will help save the size on your file. And I'm just going to export that. Offers it in the folder where I was, and I'm just going to say V2 on there because I don't want to overwrite my other files. So save, and that's done it. And that is how you export files within Affinity Photo. Short video this time, so hope you found it helpful. Right, so that was part 3. We've just got the final section on raw processing, but before we do that, I want to give feedback on the images from the Facebook images. It doesn't say Facebook on there. I need to change that slide. Right, let's head back over into Lightroom and I will do that. So the ones from Facebook this week. I'm going to go through them relatively quickly, some of which I've provided feedback on previously. But so when I say previously, I mean in Facebook itself. But let me just talk about some of these. So this one by Sonia, the track of disused railway. I like this, and as I said on Facebook, I think the trick with some of these is to change where you shoot from. If you had crouched down to shoot from down below and looked more along the lines, that would give a far better result. It'd be a more interesting result on there. You probably lose a little bit at the top on there, which is fine, because our subject here is really the railway lines and the trees growing through it and all that. So doing something like that, I think, will give a stronger shot with that one. This one, and I can't remember. Oh, it was Christine. Yes, I think this one may be just a tad over saturated. I actually quite like it, and as many of you know, my own style is just that slightly that extra little bit of saturation in my images and that extra little bit of contrast. So it's very much along those sorts of lines, and it does look like sort of an absolute paradise location on there. And I do like the fact that we've got the branches coming in on here, we've got the waterfall flowing through. And whilst there isn't a single subject on this, there's lots of interest. I find my eye moving around and seeing new things each time I look at it. The only thing I would say is we've got this lovely palm tree here, and we've just got one frond coming in at the top. And I'd perhaps like to see maybe just a little bit more of that palm tree, not a huge amount more, just a touch more. And then I keep seeing different things every time I look at it. That's why I really like this image. I've just spotted the building in the corner there. It's a sort of Garden of Eden type image, which I'm really liking on it. So yeah, well done with that shot, John. Right, this is the shambles in York. Really nice processing. I know this was done with Snapseed on an iPad. I don't know whether you have things like Lightroom or Photoshop, but this is a prime image for sky replacement. I can't remember what Snapseed would do, but I'm sure there would be tools in Snapseed to try and bring out some additional information in the sky. It just lacks there because that white area is drawing my eye up, but it's still a nice image. And this is why I was a little bit harsh with your other images, because you are a good photographer and you can produce cracking images, but you don't always. And it's this thing about self-editing that for feedback, just put up the images that need feedback. Things like wonky horizons and horizons in the middle of the screen, we've talked about so many times with your images that I shouldn't need to be giving you feedback on those again, on that. Evind, right, a pair of images here, which are sort of landscape sunsets on there. Now, a couple of things just to say about this. You've got the horizon in the middle. Usually, the stronger place for a horizon is off-center. And if I just go and crop this, you'll see what I mean. The bright sky up there, I don't think it's adding as much. The really interesting bit of the sky is down below. So if I went to there with it, we've moved the horizon up and we've got a much stronger image for it, I would say. The other thing I would think with this is the rocks are really quite interesting, and they're not, as far as I can tell on here, they're sharp at this resolution on there, but maybe with the tripod, just, I don't know. whether the tripod needs to be just down a little bit so that they are a bit more prominent in the foreground on there with it. I actually prefer your other image, which was this one, and I like the colours in here. I like the fact that you've used a long exposure to give this what I call the candy floss effects on the sea on there. Again, we can afford to just lose a little bit of the bright sky and concentrate on the more interesting bit. And orange and blue are diametrically opposite colours on the colour wheel, so they are really strong colours to have together. So that works nicely on that. So I really like that image. Again, unfortunately, I can't tell whether how sharp that is. It looks as though the very foreground might not be. And again, I don't have the settings, so I don't know whether a change of settings might have helped on that. But it's a lovely shot. I really do like it. And I prefer it without that post in there. I think it speaks by itself without the need for the post in there. Right, back to John Barton. Now, this is what I'm saying, John. This is an absolutely cracking image. If I've got a couple of nitpicks, it's the fact that the post is bending out, and that's an easy fix. And you can do that in Snapseed, vertical adjustments on there just to it's a great black and white conversion. Lovely, interesting sky on there. Nice little bits of reflection as well. Let's just compare it with the original, just so that people can see how well you have done with this. One of the things that the black and white conversion does is it hides the fact that this one plank is different colour to everything else. So I go over there, it's more or less hidden, and I think that works well with it. I'd like to see just the top of the light in there on here, but it's a lovely conversion. And I am harsh on you at times, and I'm very aware that I'm probably more harsh on your images than anybody else's. And that's because you do sort of flit between producing great images and substandard images. And I think it's not because you can't, it's just sometimes I think you're a bit lazy about doing the editing. And I would really like to encourage you, concentrate on the ones that you put the work in and show us those, because you can do things and you can produce great images, and this is the evidence for it. Bernard, I know you're not watching live tonight. Another one from your shoot at my studio the other week. Love this. I like the fact that we've got the blinds for her to into. I think it does need just a little bit of straightening up on there, something like that, and maybe just lose a little bit at the back there. But I think that works well with it. There's an air of mystery about it. Nice exposure on the face, lighting on the face there. A really good image. I know you were quite concerned about the quality of the images you were producing at this point in the shoot, but you've got absolutely nothing to be ashamed of with images like that. They are great. Well done on there. Andy, this is a bit odd from you. Again, I think this falls into the category of, I know you can do better than this. The reason I say that, there's a couple of things here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to lose the white borders for the purposes of the edit on this. And I'll just go full screen as well so you can see a little bit better. I would say those trees are leaning. Now, I don't know whether they were leaning in real life or just the way the camera has captured it. But I would definitely use a transform on here, and I would use guided and I pick that tree as that needs to be straight, and I would say that is probably the straight on there. And let's see what that does. So now I've done that, I can crop it in a little bit more over here. Yeah, I need to give it a tad more like that. Now, I think that helps with it. This bright area up here is definitely drawing my eye, and I'm not sure, because I haven't tried this, whether a highlights adjustment will help with it. So it's taking the colour out if I do that. So what I'm going to try is a vignette and see whether I can just help it a bit. No. What can we do with that? Well, again, a little bit of an experiment on this, because especially as we've got new tools here, I'm going to use the masking tool for the first time, and I'm going to do select sky. Let's see how good this becomes. It's got the sky. So now with that selected, if I put a little bit more colour into it and just do a little bit of dehaze on it, add a bit of colour in there, those highlights, bring them down a little bit more. We're kind of rescuing that just a tad, bring it down to add a little bit of colour into it. Now, okay, so we've done that on there. That, I think, improves it. Come out of the masking tool on that. I think now, vignette-wise, I could put in just a very slight vignette on there, and I think that helps. Now, there are probably other things I would like to see different about this, Andy. It's not really got any interest, any foreground interest to it. You don't always have to have a foreground interest, but this, if you haven't got a foreground interest, you need something different in the background. Now, the autumn colours haven't quite come out. I think this needed a couple of extra weeks for that to turn orange and for that to turn orange. The conifer at the background is not going to, I don't think. I think if you got that colour, that extra orange colour in there would really help this. So it's not one of the better images I've seen from you, but there's a few suggestions on there as to what could be done with it in post-production. I've probably been a little bit, well, actually it's not too bad on the selection there. It's showing up banded on here, which I don't like, and I don't know quite why that is. I'd have to have a look at that. But there's just a few things to think about with that one, Andy, on there. Right, a couple final more. Christine, nice shot in Funchal, know the park well on here. I know this is about capturing the rainbow. I can't remember what you use for a camera. One thing I would try with this is tripod and long exposure, just to capture the shape of the blur of the water with it. It looks. Oh no, that was just the way it was showing the full screen on there. I was going to say it looked a little over sharpened, but it was the effect of going full screen with it. It's a nice shot. A nice shot on there. Just think about trying to get that blur on the water with it. Richard, some firework images. This is Shropshire fireworks. Windy day because we can see all the trails going off to one side, and I'm not sure what was going on here, whether it was a bonfire or not. But yeah, nice shots. I think that's the weaker one of the of the images. Though, having said that, I was looking at it and thought, for some reason, it just reminded me of a phoenix in there with the beak and the wings and the tail over here. So it just, I'd probably fail a Rorschach test looking at things like that. It's interesting, but I don't think it's quite as strong as the other. This one's quite weak as well. I can see what you've tried to do. You've tried to bring back the detail in the blown out areas down here, and you've just got a colour cast on it. It's one of those where I think it was beyond rescuing on getting that detail back, which is a shame. It would have been better to slightly underexpose this and then lighten it up a bit so that you preserve more of the detail down here on it. So of the three, first one is the strongest. That's the strongest of the images on there. So thanks for sharing them, Richard. Nice shots. I do like the blur and the smoke in there with it as well, how that's come out. So that's that. Okay, so back over to here. That's the feedback. Right, let's move on to nothing new. Oh, right, okay, we've got a couple of things in the chat, so I'll just comment about those. Yeah, you're welcome on the feedback. I hope it was helpful to both Evind and Andy. So yeah, a couple of things there. Right, let's just move on with this. Part 4, raw processing. So roll VT. Hello, welcome to my 4th video in my beginner's tutorials on Affinity Photo. This time we're looking at the develop persona and processing raw files. So let's start this by opening our raw file. I've got one here and I can just double click on it to open it in Affinity. Close that window. Now, with this file, you'll see what's actually happened is that it's changed the persona as it's opened it. So instead of being in the photo persona up here, we are now in the develop persona. And this is what we would use for processing raw files. This image is deliberately dark because I wanted to preserve the highlights down here. And that means I need to make some changes. Now, changes are all done, or most of them are done over here. And we've got a number of tabs in the studio available to us. So I'm going to start with the basic tab. And under here, I'm going to adjust the exposure and bring that up so that the general image is of the brightness that I want. Now that has caused the shadows and the highlights, so I'm going to check that, which opens that up. And if I just move that down so I've got a bit more on the screen, what I can now do is bring those highlights down back to how it was with the detail in there, and I'm going to just bring the shadows up a bit. Don't want to go too far with it, but just enough on there. What the other tabs have, we have a lens tab which allows us to do lens corrections. Now I can see here I've got a warning to say that Affinity doesn't know anything about, couldn't find a particular lens profile for it, although one appears to have been selected. I'm not convinced it's necessarily the right one from that. I would have thought I'd have been shooting with my 24-105, looking at that image, which would be that. That's a bit more like it. So we've got the right profile on there. You see that's corrected, has corrected that. If I hadn't got a profile, and wanted to do the corrections myself, I could use this slider to correct for any distortion in the lens. Now, if you play around with the slider and want to reset it, in Photoshop, it's double click on the label. That doesn't work in Affinity. You double click on the handle. If I double click on that, that resets it, and I'm going to re-enable that. So we've got there. And the Details tab is your noise reduction. So I'm going to zoom in, Control and mouse wheel, and have a look to see whether I need to do much on noise reduction on this image. Actually not too bad. There's just a touch in there, which I'm not sure you'll be able to see on the video with it. I'm just trying to find an area that's particularly affected. So here we go. So we've got a little bit here, and I'm just going to bring up the luminance slider just a touch on there. That's the amount of noise reduction. The details in there, if it starts to go a little bit soft, you can bring that up a bit more. Don't really need to with this particular image. I've just spotted something here. We've got some chromatic aberration on here, quite bad around there. You can see the purple fringing. Back over to the lens on here, I can check chromatic aberration reduction, and it goes away and thinks about it, and you can see there it's reduced it slightly, and I'm just going to try a little bit of defringing on it as well and see if that helps as well. It has just a little bit. So we've sorted that out. Control 0 to fit the image to the screen. So now, what am I going to do with it? That's a reasonable start point with this. I could do a curves adjustment if I want to give a little bit more contrast. Don't want to do too much on here. That just helps a little bit with it. Maybe it's still slightly dark, so just push that exposure up just a fraction on there, and maybe just a little bit on the contrast, not too much, about 3%. And there we go. Now I've done those changes, the next step is a destructive step. At the moment, I can change any of those sliders. You saw me go back and change the exposure again after my first decision on there. And I might still decide my highlights need to come down a little bit. So I can still change things. In order to do anything with this, this is not true non-destructive editing. It is at this stage, but the moment I want to be able to save this, you can see there is no save option available in here. The only thing I can do is click develop or cancel. Cancel obviously forgets everything I have done. If I hit develop, look what's happened now. It goes through, does all those changes to the image, and it effectively flattens it down to a single layer. So it's not true non-destructive editing when you use Affinity to process your raw files. It's non-destructive until you hit develop, at which point all the changes that you have done have been baked in to the layer that you're working on. I can now do other things on here if I want, other bits of editing and things like that, but I can't go back. Even if I change my persona back to the develop persona, there's nothing there. On the basic tab, everything has been reset on there. Everything's reset because I'm now doing things to this baked in image. So just be aware of that if you're processing raw files, that once you hit develop, it's baked in. Now I can do layers and things on here to my heart's content. So basically, the way I would use that develop step is just to do as I've done here, the basic processing, and now if I want to do anything else with it, I would do it at this stage within the image. So, so now if I want to do an adjustment of some description, and let's say I wanted to change the white balance. Have I got a white balance on here? I should have a white balance. Yeah, there we go, the white balance. I've got options here for as an adjustment. I'm going to say warm, so I've got that, and I can change that and warm it up as I wish on there. I'll close it, and that's a layer now that's non-destructive, and I can turn it on and off. So if I decide I've actually done that too much, double click on the icon and I can cool it down a fraction on there. With that. So now I can come to save this, file, save. Where does it save it? Again, it asks me to create an AF photo file, so I just say that. But what has that file got in it? It's got these two layers. The background layer with the baked-in development that I did in the Develop tab, the Develop Persona, and this one layer over the top. Now I could add other layers, I could do black and white or whatever I wanted with it, which at this point, so long as I use layers, is non-destructive. But that Develop tab is a destructive tab. Hope you found this intro to processing raw files in Affinity Photo helpful. Right, so that's my final video. Again, I've run over time a little bit on there. Those videos will be going on the channel as standalone items over the next couple of weeks on there. Now, time for me to talk about the member photo of the week. I choose one of the images that's been posted to Facebook to be the cover photo for the Facebook group, and this week the image I have chosen is this one from Evend, which, as I said, I really like the colours in there, and I'll change it shortly, and that is how it will appear as the banner image this week within the Facebook group. So congratulations, Evend, on that on there. So last look in the live chat. Let's see what's going on there. Right, Andy says Affinity is good for Fuji RAW files. Hear a lot online about having to use Capture One. Not sure if to use Lightroom and Photoshop or Affinity to change to Capture One. Really confused. Yeah, it's is a huge topic. That really is a big topic. It's not one I can do justice to in just a minute or so. The thing to think about there is, what are these tools for? Lightroom, you can use it for processing, and you should use it for processing because it's one of its capabilities, but it's actually a workflow tool which guides you through the process of everything else, and a cataloging tool. Affinity doesn't allow you to catalog, and doesn't give you that database of images to search through on there, and nor does Photoshop in its own right. Capture One does have that, but it's not as good as Lightroom for being a DAM, as they call it, Digital Asset Manager, on there. There are other possibilities available for it. Might be worth me doing a live stream all on digital asset management at some point, and talking about that and what the options are on there, and workflow tools in general, and how those different things stack up against each other on that one. So sorry I can't give you a really good answer to that one on there. Right. Yeah, if you've got any other questions during the week, do email me. Next Sunday, I'm going to do something a little bit different next Sunday. And for those of you who have a photography website and would like feedback on how the website works and looks, do get in touch. Because I just want to sort of, almost as someone who, one of the things we find with our websites is we get so close to them, we don't see the issues that other people see in them. And I know my website's got loads and loads and loads of issues, probably more than anybody else's. But I think it would be interesting just to go through and work through about 2 or 3 different websites and just provide feedback on how it appears to somebody else looking at it, things that you might miss. In the same way, feedback on images, but the actual website. So if you have one that showcases your work, then get in touch on that, because that's what I'm going to be talking about next week. If you've got images you want feedback on, feedback@ians-studio.co.uk. Do post them to the Facebook group as well. And I guess until next week, as ever, keep making great photos. Thanks for watching, folks. I'll go off and watch Doctor Who and Formula 1 now. Bye for now.